Okay, we are up to Pei Vav Amid Aleph. We're finishing up this topic. The Gemara got into a whole discussion, but it got into the discussion of Kisei Adam because the Gemara said that Rav Chia had flax that moths were eating. So the Gemara says, "Aminafal Yaniva Bekisna." Would flax actually attack Rav Chia's? Would moths actually attack Rav Chia's flax? The Gemara is going to point out that one of the things that happened when Rav Chia moved to Eretz Yisrael was that moths stopped attacking flax. It was like a epidemic that was removed because of the tzaddik. V'amar Rav bar Abba. Didn't Rav bar Abba once say, "V'amar l'amar Rav bar Shva, Nishalu b'nei Hagoyla"? When certain tzaddikim came to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, as we'll see in a moment, including Rav Chia. Apparently, there was a time where there was a little bit of a lapse in the greatness of Eretz Yisrael and the tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. And then when these rabbanim moved from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, Pasku Hazikin, the following phenomenon stopped in Eretz Yisrael as a merit of the tzaddikim. There were no more meteors, hazavois, earthquakes, haruchais, v'hara'emim, hurricanes and thunder. The wine of Eretz Yisrael didn't sour, and their flax was not affected by moths. And which tzaddikim do they attribute these things changing? It was Rav Chia and his sons. So you see, Rav Chia was the one who, in his chus. So how can it be that his flax is being attacked? So the Gemara says a famous but complicated concept. Although he had chusim, and his chus was enough to protect the entire world, he himself was afflicted by it, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want his own chusim to be used at all for his own personal gain. As the Gemara says, the name of Rabbi Merav, every day a heavenly voice comes out and says, the entire world is, all the parnas in the world is coming down to this chus of Chanina ben Doisa. B'Chanina beni, dailoi, b'kav charuv mer Shabbos l'Shabbos. But Rav Chanina himself only has a kav charuvim every Erev Shabbos. Sorry. So the point is, so you see that even though the entire world is taken care of in the chus of Rav Chanina ben Doisa, but he himself didn't have any money. So you see such a musig that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it, where the tzaddik's chus is enough for the entire world, but it's not that it's not enough for him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to waste this chusim on himself, because that tzaddik is willing to be meiser nefesh and serve Hashem with it without it. So too, the Rav Chia was the protector of the moths for everyone else, but not for himself. Okay, new Mishnah. Cher Rishayte v'Katan. So now, Cher Rishayte v'Katan are not able to shecht in halacha. There's a machlekes tanoim. Is it just that we're machmer, that maybe their shechit is not good? Maybe it is good, but it's a suffix. Rav Meir holds that it's a vaday nevela. So that's relevant, obviously, for hilchos shchita, whether they could shecht it themselves, they could eat their shchita, but it's also relevant to kisei adam. Kisei adam only applies if it's a proper shchita. If it's not a proper shchita, there's no mitzvah kisei adam. So says the Mishnah, cher shayte v'katan sheshachtu v'chem ra'yinaisam, if a cher shayte v'katan shecht, but there's mashgichim on top of them, so then it's a good shchita, because there are people that are watching them. So then chayv l'chasais, then you have to do kisei adam on the dam. But bein levei matzmam, however, if they shechted in private, potem l'chasais, you don't have to do kisei adam. This is the shita of Meir. Because it's not a good shchita, bevadois, it's not a good shchita, then there's no kisei adam. This same discussion, the same shaila of whether it's a kasher shchita, while it affects kisei adam, it also affects the halachas of oisei vesbenoi. Oisei vesbenoi, again, is only aser when it's a proper shchita. So if a cher shayte v'katan were to shech the mother, can you then shech the child the same day? So if it's a proper shchita, you're not allowed to, but if it's not a proper shchita, you could. So says the Mishnah, and if they shechted and there are people watching them, said it's a good shchita, then asur l'shchet achreim, you're not allowed in the same day to shecht the offspring of the mother. But bein levein atzmai, however, if they were shechting on themselves, meaning, so then Rameir says, Mati l'shchet achreim. Rameir, who I mentioned before, said definitively it's not a good shchita, so then you could shech the other, the child of the mother. The Chum disagree, because the Chum say it's not that it's not a good shchita. It's a suffix whether it's not a good shchita. So you have to be chayshish that it is a good shchita, and therefore you're not allowed to shecht oisei vesbenoi on the same day. But even the Chachamim who say you're not allowed to shech the mother, if you did, you're not going to get malchus because it's a suffix, it's not bevadai. Now, what's interesting is the Mishnah started off and mentioned two halachas regarding Chershet Bekatan. Kisi Adam and Oisev Es Benoi. Now, Oisev Es Benoi, it speaks out, it's a machlokes of Meir and the Chacham. At the beginning of Kisi Adam, it just says you don't have to do Kisi Adam. So I mentioned that it could be it's totally this machlokes, but in the Mishnah it's a little bit strange because it kind of sounds like even though the Chachamim hold that there's a suffix, whether it's a shchita, Kisi Adam you don't do. It's a little bit strange. Well, what's the pshat? So the Gemara speaks out. The Gemara says the Rabbanon, Ma'ishna Reisha Deloy Pligi, Ma'ishna Seva De Pligi. How come the Rabbanon only argue in the end of the Mishnah? They should argue in the beginning. In the beginning of the Mishnah, when it says Patum L'chasais, they should say Chayiv V'Kisei Adam. If their whole point is that it's a suffix, whether it's a good shchita, and suffix you have to be machmer, so you should also have to do Kisei Adam. So says the Gemara. Reisha, so the Gemara at first, eventually the Gemara is going to say that the truth is the Rabbanon do argue by both, and they just didn't write their shita. But now the Gemara is going to say no. Perhaps the Rabbanon, although they hold that it's a suffix whether it's a good shchita, and therefore Oisei Es Benoi they're going to be machmer, they would agree you don't have to do Kisei Adam. Why not? If it's a suffix, you should have to do Kisei Adam. Reisha, Yamrin Chayv L'chasas, because the Rabbanon feel that if they tell people to do Kisei Adam, people are going to think it's a good shchita, they're going to eat from it. As the Gemara is going to point out, Oisev Es Benoi, they're just telling you basically to not shecht. So telling you to not shecht, it's the optics. We want to acknowledge it's a suffix, but we don't want to tip our hand and make people think that it's definitively an issue. I'm sorry, definitively okay. It's definitively a good shchita, because then people are going to eat it. We want people to just basically hand up, not do anything. Don't eat it, but don't do Oisev Es Benoi. The Gemara says, so Oisev Es Benoi, they could just tell people not to because it's not a bad optic, because you'll just see people not shechting. It doesn't do anything. But when it comes to Kisei Adam, if they tell people to do Kisei Adam, because it's a suffix, whether it's a good shchita, people are going to think that that's our way of saying it is a good shchita definitively. So it says the Gemara, Seifanami, even the Gemara Rabban asal lishchad achreim amri shchita malaisi v'asal michal shchitasan. So how come by Oisev Es Benoi we're not concerned about that? That when the Rabbanon tell people don't shech the mother on the same day, why aren't you concerned that they're going to say, oh, the shchita of the cheresh of the Betagatan is good and they'll eat the shchita? So the Gemara mentioned what I said, which is Seifa, Amri, Bisra, Deloikim, Bebaile. People are not going to equate that because they're just going to say, well, the guy is not shechting. Maybe it's because he's not hungry. They're not going to definitively say, oh, it must be that it's a good shchita. So it says as opposed to Kisei Adam, if the psak is to do Kisei Adam, people will think that is a good shchita. So says the Gemara, even if you do Kisei Adam, who says it's a good shchita? Maybe people will just say that they're covering blood because blood makes them nauseous. Reisha Nami, Amri lenaker chatzeru tzarich. Maybe people will say that he's just cleaning up his chatzer. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. First of all, shachad ba'ashba ma'ikol memar. What if it's not in the house and it's in an ashba and you're still doing Kisei Adam? And why would you do Kisei Adam in the ashba? It must be because you're paskening it's a good shchita. Or boy limlach mekelmem. Or stam. The Mishnah doesn't just mean the person's doing it on his own. The Mishnah means the person goes to the rabbi and the rabbi says, do Kisei Adam, then the person's going to put it together. As opposed to Oisev Es Benoi. So it says, wait a minute, if you're actually talking about where they go to the rabbi and the rabbi paskins, then if the rabbi paskins don't shech the mother on the same day, isn't that also a definitive ruling? So it says the Gemara, L'tamech sechvanami ba limlach mekel memar. So the Gemara says, you're right. This whole thing is a mistake. The truth is, when Chazal, when the Rabbanan argue in the Sefer, they argue in the Reisha also. They argue in both cases. They hold that you're not allowed to Oisev Es Benoi, you have to do Kisei Adam. They're chayshish that is a good shchita. The chayshish is not a good shchita. They're always machmer. How come they didn't say their opinion in the first? Rabban akula milsa polig. They nashid l'Rameir adamasik l'milsa v'haduliflik. They let Rameir say all his opinions, and then they argued. So they happened to only argue in the Sefer, but who had dinner Reisha? Okay. Now the Gemara says, the Gemara just speaks it out. What is Rameir's shita based on? So when we did the Mishnah, I mentioned that Rameir holds it's definitively a nevela, meaning it's not a suffix whether chesed v'katan can shecht. They for sure cannot. So the Gemara speaks it out. Bishlam Rabban l'chumra Rameir ma'ikol memar. So Rav Yaakov Yochanan mechayev Rameir al shchitas mishum nevela. Rameir feels that if a chesed v'katan shecht, it's a vade nevela. My time. The question is, why does Rameir hold this way? That a chesed v'katan is a vade nevela. So says the Gemara, Amar Ravami, hoil v'roiv masei v'kukol. You go bas a roiv. Roiv tells you that they mess up. Roiv times they mess up, which means Roiv tells you that it's a nevela. Okay. The Gemara has a question. Why do you need roiv? Amrle Rav Papa Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Now, because normally, right, you have a suffix. You're not sure what to do. That's the Rabbanon. It's a suffix. It's 50-50. Rav Meir is saying, I have roiv. If you didn't have roiv, then it's a suffix. The Gemara says, but Rav Meir sheet is interesting. Rav Meir is always chayshel muta. Rav Meir gives chashivas to the minority. So let's say it's not a roiv. Let's say it's 30% mess up. You say, well, it's not roiv. Yeah, we have 30% mess up. That's a treif, that it's a nevela. And you also have cheskas iser. An animal when it's alive is not cheskas kashrus. You can't eat it, it's alive. So you have cheskas kashrus, meaning cheskas iser, that you're starting off the discussion which is this animal is a problem until proven otherwise. So you have cheskas kashrus, meaning cheskas iser, plus miyut, a problem. Take the miyut, add it to the chazaka, and that equals roiv. So why do you have to say that Rameir holds it's a problem because roiv says it's an issue? Even if it's not roiv, Rameir himself takes the miuta into account. So you have the miyut, which is 30%, plus the cheskas iser ups it down to roiv. So what do you need roiv for? The miyut plus chazaka is a problem. The Gemara says, "V'am Rav Huna Breder Rishul Rav Papa Ma'ir roiv afilu miyut nami." Rameir chayishul miuta samach miuta v'chazaka v'tlei ruba. Where do we find Rameir doing this equation of instead of having roiv, taking a miyut, adding it to chazaka, and it propelling to being roiv? To Tanan, tinik shenimtza b'tzada isu batzak b'yad. You have a child, and he has a little piece of dough in his hand. Now there's a large dough, and he has a little piece in his hand. Now we don't know where he got the dough. We don't know what his tumor tahara status is. Rameir mitaher. Rameir says the entire dough, the large dough, is tahar. Chamim mitam nishadarka shel tinik l'tapeach. The Rabbanan say no. The dough is a problem. Why? Because it's normal for a child to poke in the trash, and he touched a lizard, so he's tameh, and he's got dough in his hand. Where did he got the dough from? He got the dough from the big dough. So that means he touched the big dough, and he's tameh. That's the Rabbanan shita. Now, why is Rameir holding that it's fine? So, at my time with Rameir, why is Rameir metaher? They have a good taina. So kasaba roiv tinoikis metapchin umiyadei metapchin. The Rabbanan are saying is that roiv children are tameh because they touch dead animals. Okay, get that. Rameir says fine. So you're saying miyut are tahar, 30%. Take the 30%, add it to the cheskas kashrus that the average food is tahar until told otherwise, and that bumps it up to being tahar. That makes it a roiv. So you have the miyut plus the cheskas tahara makes it a roiv. So to zelu mazeh over here, you don't need roiv, the achir shet v'katan ken shecht. If you have miyut plus cheskas kisser, should be equal roiv. Gemara says the isa zeh b'cheskas tahara. Let's go to the next page. Samach miyut l'chazaka v'ichlei ruba. So the Gemara says no. The pshat is when you have miyut with a chazaka, it doesn't make a roiv. It makes it 50-50. And therefore, for our discussion, that won't help you because I need more than 50-50. But by the case of Tumah Tahara, the halacha is that as long as it's a suffix, right, there are rules. Suffix Tumah b'shus hayachid tameh, suffix Tumah b'shus harabim tahar. Now this is, the shaila is a suffix Tumah. Rameir holds that if you have miyut plus a chazaka, it doesn't make roiv, it makes it 50-50. Now, 50-50, by Tumah Tahara, here's the halacha. So, it's a suffix. So suffix Tumah b'shus hayachid is tameh. So this case is happening, shus hayachid should be tameh. However, there's another rule, and that is because suffix tumah is learned out from a saita is someone that you could ask what happened. Because this child is not someone you could ask what happened, suffix tumah b'shus hayachid, the lashon is b'davar she'ein bo das lishol, then it's tahar. So the pshat is miyut with chazaka does not make roiv; it makes 50-50. So for our discussion, it's not going to help you. That's why you need roiv mess up. For Tumah Tahara, that's enough, because as long as you have a suffix, the fact that the child cannot answer what happened is enough to make it mutter. Okay. Hoyre Rabbi Rav Meir. So you have the shaila of Rav Meir and the Chachamim of whether it's a suffix or whether it's a vadei problem. Rabbi paskin like Rav Meir, but Rabbi also paskin like the Chachamim. In other words, at some point he changed his mind. Now the question is, which one did he paskin like last? Because that's obviously his definitive ruling. So Haiminai Dachrisa. So Tashema, the Gemara says the following story: Rav Abba breder Rav Chia bar Abba, Rav Zera have a kaima b'shuka de kisra apischa de b'midrasha. Rav Abba and Rav Zera were standing outside of the base medrash, and they were shmuzing. We're talking in learning. Nafak Rav Ami Eshkeche. Rav Ami went out and found them outside of the base medrash. Amar he said, Lava min lechu beidem bebedrashal etikim abroi. I told you guys not to stand outside. You should go inside because you're big Talmidei Chacham, and if they have a shayla, they should be able to ask you. So you should go in. So Rav Zera all, Rav Abba all. Rav Abba didn't go inside. I guess he couldn't, whatever his schedule. So Rav Zera went in. So Rav Zera is no longer talking to Rav Abba. So Yasi komi boile hamina achrita. So Rav Zera enters the base medrash, and the shayla they asked the base medrash was our shayla. Which one did Rabbi Paskin like last? Umeir the Chacham. So he says he was upset. Rav Zera said, instead of you summoning me into the base medrash because maybe there's a shayla, why don't you tell me outside what they're talking about? I was talking to Rav Abba. I could have asked Rav Abba, because why would Rav Abba know? He says, the Gemara says, Amar leishakida de shayla l'saba dilma shmilu Abba. I could have asked Rav Abba because he knew he maybe had heard a psak from his father of Abba. Bavu aminei Rav Yochanan, and his father of Abba was a Talmud of Yochanan. Rav Chia bar Abba called Tlasan Yom Kamahadol Talmud. They come to Rav Yochanan. His father, because Rav Chia bar Abba with his father would learn by Rav Yochanan for 30 days, every 30 days. They were chazer. The point is, he was a Talmud of Yochanan, so maybe Rav Yochanan would have answered. You should have told me. Doesn't answer what happened, but no. May have it low. What's the conclusion? Tashema the Shalach Rav Elazar L'Goyler. Rav Elazar once sent a psak to Bavel. Hoyre Rabbi Kir Rav Meir. The Rabbi passed like Rav Meir. So obviously that's the last definitive ruling. He once told passing like the Rabbanan also. The fact that he didn't mention this, Shmamina ha'achrita Shmamina. Okay. Now we know that Kisei Adam applies by an oif and a chaya. So Zak the Mishnah Shachan Mea Chayis Makam Echad. Let's say you shecht 100 chayis in one place. Kisei Echad L'Kulam. You don't have to do a separate Kisei Adam for each one. One Kisei Adam covers it. Mea oifis Makam Echad. Similarly, if you shecht 100 birds in one place, Kisei Echad L'Kulam. And more than this, chayav oif makam echad kisach l'kum. You could do one kisei dam for chaya and an oif. All chaya, 100 chayas, one kisei dam. 100 oifes, one kisei dam. A mixture of 100 chayas and oifes, one kisei dam. Rav Yehuda says no. I agree 100 oifes, one kisei dam. I agree 100 chayas, one kisei dam. But a chaya and an oif requires its own. Shachar chaya chisen avachak yishchar desa oif. If you shech the chaya, you have to do kisei dam and the chaya, then you could shech the oif because oifes and chayas cannot do kisei dam together. So what's the source? Tanur Rabbanan. The pasuk says chaya. Kol mashma chaya implies no matter how many, it could be 100. And beimeruva beimutas. Oif kol mashma. Oif beimeruva mutas. Same for oif. Therefore, that's the source that could be 100. And because the pasuk does not differentiate between chaya and oif, it means that even a mixture of chayis and oif is one kisei dam covers it. Shachamei chayis makam echa kisei echad l'kulam. Mei oif is makam echa kisei l'kulam. Chayav oif makam echa kisei echad l'kulam. Rav Yehuda says no. Shacha chaya chisen v'achay shichar oif. Chaya and oif are not together. Why? Shemachaya oy oif. The extra oy separates that you can't have one kisei dam for both. Amr lois. They responded, Harei oimer nefesh kol basar dame b'nafshehu. But doesn't the pasuk say nefesh kol basar dame b'nafshehu, that the nefesh of a basar, the dam is on its soul? What does that have to do with? How is that a response to him? So Ma'ikam Hadalis. The Gemara says there was something missing. Hachi Kamar Rabbanan. This is what the Rabbanan said to Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda holds that the word oy separates a chay and oif, that if you shech both, you need a separate kisei dam. Hay oy mi by lil chalik. They said, I thought you use oy for something else. Oy is just to tell me that there's a mitzvah kisei adam, even if I don't actually shech both. Because if it just said chaya the oif, I would think there's only a kisei dam if you shech both. But if you just shech a chaya, there's no kisei dam. If you just shech a oif, there's no kisei dam. The oy tells me that it's either, not and. So how could you tell me oy is to tell me that there's a separate kisei dam required? For chayas and oifis, I thought oy is just to tell me that the mitzvah applies to each species independently. So Rav Yehuda responds, mid damai nafka. I learned that out from damai. For Rabbanan respond, damai tuva mashma. Damai is not singular to separate the species. Damai is plural. Dichsiv ki nefesh kol basar damai benafshehu. So that was how they responded. Damai. The damai cannot mean to separate a chaya and an oif. To tell me that the mitzvah applies if I just shech the chaya or if I just shech the oif, because damai is plural. Amar Rav Chia, Ma'ida Hayir Rav Yehuda le'inin bracha she'ena mevarech le'bracha achas. But Rav Yehuda agrees. There's a bracha that you say before you shecht. Rav Yehuda agrees that if you shecht the chaya, you make a bracha, you shecht the chaya. So he said, before you shecht the oif, you have to do kisei adam. The kisei adam is not mafsik. You could make a bracha, shecht the chaya, kisei adam, then shech the oif without a new bracha. The kisei adam is not a mafsik. It's not a hefsik. So I'll say it out. So the Gemara is going to ask a question. The halacha is that once you say you're ready to bench, you can't drink anymore because it's a hefsik. So why don't you say that Kisei Adam, because the Birchas Hamazon is the end. So Kisei Adam is also the end. So why don't you say that Kisei Adam is a hefsek between the shechita of the first animal and the shechita of the second, which require another bracha? Why is this different than the case of Tamid the Rav? The Rav Baruna V'Rachananel Tamid the Rav Hava Yasusu. They were sitting at a meal. Kayalayu Rav Yaba Saba. Rav Yaba Saba came past them. Amrle Hav Livrich. They said, no, we should bench. Hadar Amrle Hav Lishti. Then one they decided, actually let's drink some more wine. Amrle Rav Yeba Saba. Rav Yeba Saba says, Hachi Amar Rav Kiva Namar Hav Lemivrich. It's a Leila Mishti Chamra. Once you say I have to bench, you can't drink anymore without making a bracha. It's a hefsek because you were Messiah. So Chanami Kivan de Itva Lekisoi Yichayv Bracha. So it's over here. The second you do Kisei Adama, the first animal, that's it. That shechita is done. So then it should require another bracha before you shech the nether one. So the Gemara responds, no, Hachi Hashta. That's not the same. Hasa Mishta Brucha B'Hadi Adadi L'Yasher. You can't drink and make Birchas Hamazon at the same time. But over here you can shech in one hand and do Kisei Adama in another. What it means is like this. Birchas Hamazon is the end of the meal. Continuing to drink is continuing the meal. Those are contradictory notions. You can't have both. You can't both continue the meal and also bench. Therefore, when you say you bench, by definition, you're choosing sides. If you choose to continue the meal, you'll have to make a new bracha. But over here, just because I shecht an animal and I do kisei adam, that doesn't mean I'm done shechita. It means I'm finishing up that animal. That's the end of the shechita of that one animal. Technically, I could shecht and do kisei adam on the other hand. In other words, they're not contradictory. I could do kisei adam and not be done. They're not two opposing forces. Kisei adam is the conclusion of the first shechita. I can conclude the first shechita while continuing the second shechita. It's not a problem, and therefore no new bracha is required. I will stop there.